Welcome. I am Nikki Picaro. I am the interim dean of the graduate school, and it is my great pleasure to welcome all of you to our 7th annual graduate postdoc research symposium. So thank you all for being here and presenting your work. This event is going to highlight incredible research and innovation led by our graduate students and our postdoctoral scholars, whose work continues to drive discovery and impact across disciplines. Today is an opportunity for us to showcase the groundbreaking ideas, foster collaborations, and celebrate the dedication of our emerging scholars. I encourage you to engage in meaningful discussions, exchange insights, and take full advantage of the expertise that we have gathered here today. Today is our largest research symposium to date. We have over 100 presenters in both posters, orals, and our TED-like talk presentations. So thank all of you for being part of this special event. I do look forward to an inspiring and enriching symposium. So once again, welcome. At this time, you don't get extra credit for that. At this time, I would like to welcome our keynote speaker, Dr. Sara M. St. George. Dr. St. George is a behavioral scientist and licensed psychologist trained in clinical community psychology, health psychology, behavioral medicine, prevention science, and public health. She directs the Health E-Lifestyles Lab, which is dedicated to promoting health, preventing chronic disease, and fostering positive relationships among Hispanic Latino families by developing, evaluating, and disseminating evidence-based, multi-generational digital lifestyle interventions. Aside from research, Dr. St. George contributes to the university's mission of training the next generation of prevention scientists through the teaching and mentoring of students. She directs the Masters of Prevention Science and Community Health program, teaches 2 courses in the Department of Public Health Sciences, and mentors both undergraduate and graduate students. The title of her presentation, as you can see up there, is Leveraging Technology to Build a Legacy of Health in Hispanic Families. Please join me in welcoming Dr. St. George to the stage.
Thank you so much to Dean Piquero and to everyone at the graduate school. When I received the invitation to be the keynote speaker today, I was really surprised of all the incredible faculty that they could have asked. They asked me, and so it's really an honor to be here to speak to all of you and share about my program of research. So yes, my program of research is dedicated to leveraging technology to foster a legacy of health in Hispanic families. And given that this is the graduate and postdoctoral research symposium, I wanted to start by giving you a little bit of background on my own trajectory, talk to you about my program of research, namely 2 interventions. One is called Healthy Juntos, the other one is called Con Cariño Abuelita, and then finally just share with you some future directions and things that I have planned. So before I get started, I wanted to tell you a little bit about myself. So I'm a Miami native, born and raised here in the 305. And I really function off of the belief that the family unit is kind of the most basic unit of society. And so if we can produce healthy families, then we can kind of foster healthy communities, healthy countries, and a healthy world. And so my family is my why for my work. This is my husband, John, and my 2 daughters, Lucia, who's 8, and Iliana, who's 5. That's us at the happiest place on earth a couple weeks ago. And that's my daughter's helping me in the garden, or our little garden. It's not that big. But anyways, this is my family, and this is why doing work in families like mine, Hispanic families, is so important and meaningful to me. So I began my career, I actually started off, I wanted to be a journalist, and I wanted to be like April O'Neil from the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I don't know if you all have seen Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, if I'm dating myself too much. But April O'Neil was a reporter. She would, kind of fight crime with the Ninja Turtles by night and report on their stories by day. And so I really wanted to be a journalist, so I went to the University of Missouri to study journalism, and I ended up changing my mind. So I got bachelor's degrees in psychology and Spanish. While I was there, I was fortunate to participate in the McNair Scholars Program and do research on eating disorders and exercise. Then I transitioned to graduate school at the University of South Carolina. And while I was there, I was also very fortunate to have NIH-funded thesis and dissertation studies, and that's really where my work transitioned to obesity and chronic disease prevention, and it was in non-Hispanic Black families. And then fast forward, I went to the University of Miami, here where I am now, came back home. And I did my 1-year clinical internship here at the Mailman Center for Child Development, so really focused on pediatrics. And then I did a 2-year postdoc in the Department of Public Health Sciences, which is where I am now. And that allowed me to transition into a faculty position, which I've been in since 2016. And while on the faculty, I was, again, very fortunate to have a K01 grant funded, and most recently, my very first large NIH grant, an R01 grant. So that is what I'm going to be talking to you about today. So my program of research spans 2 areas that I like to think about it. One is a content area of expertise, and the other one is a methodological area of expertise. And I didn't intend to have this methodological area of expertise. I will encourage you as graduate students, when I was in my master's thesis happened to be a qualitative study. And so I gained some skills at that time, and fast forward when I came to my postdoc here at University of Miami, my mentor at the time said, somebody that was teaching the qualitative methods class left. And he was like, hey Sarah, didn't you do a qualitative study for your thesis? You want to teach the qualitative methods class? And I said yes. And that was actually one of the best yeses that I've said in my career, because now it's really facilitated people soliciting this expertise from me and me being able to join programs outside of my passion and area of expertise and work with really cool and intelligent people on other kind of topics. So you never know, the expertise that you're developing now will likely be solicited in the future. So, really embrace kind of a yes for yourself as well. So my content area of research is the development, evaluation, and dissemination of digital lifestyle interventions. And then in methods, it's using qualitative and mixed methods to kind of develop and adapt preventive interventions. And so these are some of the studies that I work on. I just want to highlight kind of one paper that was recently published. Now we're really into using rapid qualitative analysis, especially in the field of implementation science, to quickly generate findings and really produce implications quickly so that we can help with service delivery and health research and things like that. So this is a paper that some colleagues and I worked on lessons learned, and it might be one of my most cited papers. So again, you just never know to embrace that. But I will not be talking about methods today. I will be talking about con cariño, ahorita, and healthy minutos. So to set the context for the problem that I intend to address as part of my program of research, it is obesity. And right now we're seeing that about 42% of adults and about 20% of youth in the United States have obesity. And this just shows the upward trajectory throughout the years. What this reflects is a 37% increase in obesity for adults and about a 42% increase for youth since the year 1999 to 2000. So definitely seeing increases. Just another way to look at the data here. This shows the states with adult obesity rates 30 to 35% in blue, and then 35% and higher in red. And what you see is that in the year 2013, only 2 states were above 35% of their residents having obesity. And now, in 2023, or the most recent year of data, it's 23%, or 23 states, excuse me, that have higher than 35% of their population with obesity. And then thinking about the Hispanic community, so there are 62 million Hispanics in the United States. This reflects about a 23% increase over the last decade since 2010. About 1 in 5 residents of the US are Hispanic. And so we are not unfamiliar with this in Miami-Dade County. About 70% of the residents of Miami-Dade County are of Hispanic or Latino origin. And unfortunately, Hispanics are disproportionately impacted by obesity. So we see on the dark orange bar here, it's obesity. On the lighter orange, it's overweight. Obesity is defined as a body mass index of 30 or higher. Overweight is defined as a body mass index of between 25 and 29.9. And so on the top, you see adolescents, 12 to 19, on the bottom, adults, and you see in females and males, the Hispanics are on the top. They are the ones that are exceeding or have the higher rates of obesity. So what do we do about this problem of obesity? It is kind of a problem that we think about it being at multiple levels in an ecological model, from genetics and the family at kind of the individual level to what their community is like, what their neighborhood is like, what they eat, their culture, policy, all of those things impact obesity. Unfortunately, no one grant can tackle all these things at the same time. So given my passion, given my background, and given that I've always had a heart for the youngest generation, which is the children, the family system, to me, seems where, you know, I can get the most bang for my buck in terms of prevention of obesity. The other thing to set the stage, when I started doing this work in South Carolina, at the time we were doing face-to-face interventions. And one of my kind of qualms at that time was just, it was really difficult to get families to come to us. You know, our office, even though Columbia, South Carolina is a little easier to travel to, not as much traffic as here in Miami, it just was very difficult for families to change their schedules to come to us. So I started doing some homework. I mean, this was revolutionary, you know, 10 years ago, not so much now. Looking into smartphone ownership in the US, and you all know it's ubiquitous. Right now, about 90% of adults in the US have access to a smartphone, and we don't see that many, there's no real kind of disparity here in terms of racial and ethnic group. You know, 91% of non-Hispanic whites, 84% of blacks, 91% of Hispanics, 97% of Asian. So it's a device that, if we leverage it for good, can be a very powerful tool to reach kind of communities that typically don't have access to the types of interventions that we develop. Same thing for teens. So this is from Pew 2024. The teens here were 13 to 17, but again, we see very high access to smartphones across the board. 95% of teens overall, 95%, 94%, and 96% across the different racial and ethnic groups. So I'm just setting the stage. Obesity is a problem, technology is a tool, and to understand what interventions we're doing for Hispanics, my team and I did arguably the largest and the most comprehensive systematic review and meta-analysis of obesity prevention and treatment interventions among Hispanic youth. We were purposely comprehensive, so we did studies with kids that had from 0 all the way to 18, that at least 51% of the sample was Hispanic. And it could be treatment, it could be prevention. We really wanted to get a good lay of the land. And so we used a measure of effect size called Hedges G. Hedges G is interpreted similarly to a Cohen's D, where a 0.2 is a small effect, a 0.5 around there is about a medium effect, and a 0.8 is a large effect. So our question is, you know, are interventions having an impact on weight status and other lifestyle behaviors in Hispanic youth? And if yes, what size of an effect are they having? And what we found was, so the answer is yes, they're having an effect. It's a significant one, but it's a small one. So on the weight status of the Hispanic youth, it was a negative 0.15. We want to see a negative because you might want to see that going down. For waist circumference, same thing, a significant but small effect. For physical activity, of course, a plus sign, it increases in physical activity, so that's what we expect to see. For fruit and vegetable intake, a smaller effect. It's difficult to measure fruit and vegetable intake. And for sugar sweetened beverage, a significant but small effect. We did a couple moderator analyses, and so since we had so many studies, we looked at, you know, is there any one variable where we're seeing kind of that there's bigger effects than other, in some areas than others. For family, those that involved the family had small but significant effects, a little bigger than the negative 0.15, but still small. But the only one moderator variable that was significant was developmental stage. So we categorized all of the studies as, did it target early childhood, adolescence, you know, early adolescence, later adolescence, and what we found was that interventions that targeted that adolescent phase of 12 to 15 had larger effects on weight status than the other age ranges. So there is something about that age range that is important for showing some of the larger effects. And then finally, I combed the studies. These studies were, we pulled them over a 20-year period, so anything published between the year 2000 and the year 2020, so it's not that old that I'm talking about, but at that time, only 4% of the studies leveraged some form of technology. And these were things very basic, like email, text messages, no real smartphone use at that time. Of course, COVID happened, and we're see a proliferation of digital interventions, but it's that developing interventions and publishing them takes time, and so I think we're going to see, it would be interesting to do another round of this meta-analysis, like in another 10 years. I'm not rushing to do another meta-analysis. Anybody wants to do a dissertation, come talk to me. We can work on it. So anyways, so I just set the stage for my program of research, my lab, which is called the Healthy Lifestyles Lab. And before I get too far, I want to acknowledge that 2 of my team members are here, right here, sitting in the second row. I have Dr. Vanina Pavia, and yes, give them a round of applause. She's the manager of my research team, and I have Marta Salazar, who's a clinical research coordinator. And really what I'm sharing with you today is their incredible work that they do. So ladies, I'm so happy you're here, and thank you so much. So here we are out in the, there's Marta, you see Mark right there, so great. And Vanina over there has her little son in her belly in our photo. So I take a family-based approach to everything. All family members welcome, the children of my team as well. So our mission is to promote health, prevent chronic disease, and foster positive relationships among Hispanic families through the development, evaluation, and dissemination of digital lifestyle interventions. Last little bit of things to kind of set the stage before I show you what Healthy Juntos and Con Cariño Abuelita are. So there's this framework called the IDEAS framework, and it is a framework for how to develop efficacious digital interventions. And the way that they give you some steps to do that. They don't necessarily have to be done in a linear fashion, but you do have to iterate. And so the first phases are about integrating insights from your users and from theory. The second set of phases are about basically iterating designs. So you'll see all the different iterations of designs that my team goes through and how we involve the community in helping us to make those iterations. And then finally, you assess rigorously, so you pilot, and then you evaluate the efficacy. So for Healthy Juntos, we've gone through, right now, we're in stage number 9, which is we're evaluating the efficacy of the intervention with our NCI large grant. And then, so that's the model that I'm following for how, and then the mechanics, the mechanisms, why, how do things work, and this is a window into how my brain conceptualizes all interventions. And so it's the integration of these 3 theoretical frameworks: social cognitive theory, self-determination theory, and family systems theory, which all kind of have unique constructs on their own that we're drawing from. So behavioral constructs like self-monitoring, goal setting from social cognitive theory, constructs around fostering intrinsic motivation from self-determination theory, which suggests that behaviors that are intrinsically motivated, or the ones that you kind of feel they're part of who you are the ones that people are more likely to sustain rather than behaviors that you do for some external reward. And in order to foster intrinsic motivation, we need to meet 3 key psychological needs. For autonomy, feeling like you have a choice; competence, feeling like you can; and belongingness, feeling like you're part of something bigger than yourself. I love your nonverbals, by the way. She's so engaged. She's just nodding. I love it when people in the audience do that because it gives me good feedback. I'm like, okay, they pay attention. So thank you. And then family systems theory is a theory about, that if it impacts one member of the family, it's going to have an impact on the system at large. And so thinking about positive parenting, family functioning, and those types of constructs. So here we are, Healthy Juntos and Con Cariño Abuelita, without further ado. When I present this slide, I usually like to say, if you want to see 5 years of work in a single slide, here it is. It's like simultaneously exhilarating and depressing at the same time. But no, this is part of my KO1 grant, and so as I mentioned, it's all about iterating with the community. And so we started with what I call conceptual prototypes of what the intervention was going to include based on the theoretical framework and the problem of obesity. Then, and we interviewed 20 dyads and got their feedback on just health in general, how they use technology in their families. Let me give you the high points. They didn't use technology that much for their health, outside of Google to search for symptoms. And they told me that they didn't want to read anything in an intervention. And this was so groundbreaking for me. I was like, oh, you want to read? You don't know reading. So I took a lot of notes. They provided other insights, but these are really key because you think you're going to go in one way and produce something, and then you really have to be creative. They don't tell you what they want exactly, like they don't tell me produce a radio show, which is what we did because they didn't want to read, but they told us kind of, we don't want to read, so okay. So then we developed our next set of prototypes, which were paper and minimally functioning prototypes. So a paper prototype is just that. It's a prototype on a paper. We designed it on PowerPoint, and before you give someone technology that works, you show them a paper version and you ask them questions about it, like think aloud. You know, what would you click? Why? What do you think that button does? What do you think of that icon? You know, does it make sense that the icon of a soccer ball means goals? Surprisingly, they didn't like that. So we changed it. And then we had our minimally functioning prototypes down here, which I have a software development partner, and they actually started putting games together and making them work a little bit, like click, drag and drop to see if it was working as intended. So we got 15 more dyads, brought them in, showed them, you know, our paper and minimally functioning prototypes, and then iterated quickly, and then developed our fully functioning prototype, which was a fully developed, you know, 8 modules worth of content in this intervention that was delivered over 2.5-ish months. It was intended to be delivered in 8 weeks, but families really completed it in 10 to 12 weeks, so that's how they were using it. And we brought 10 people in and did a field trial. And in a field trial, you let them use the technology in their environment. And so we wanted to see how are they, you know, how are they liking it? You know, so we interviewed them after that experience and iterated one more time. And some of the changes that you can see from one to the next are, just to give you an example, on the dual progress bars on the top, we gave them Fitbit devices, and the Fitbit has what's called an open API, and we read their steps into our application. Well, they were supposed to swipe right to see the same thing, but for their healthy meals that they would enter. Well, nobody knew to swipe right. So instead, we ended up creating these progress bars that were on the same page, but one inside the other. So these are the things that we're paying attention to. We also, you notice it says send your family member a message. Nobody sent a message, okay? So we're like, maybe we should put a bold box around it so that they see that they can send each other a message. And so that's what we did there. So that last one, we then tested it in a pilot RCT. And just to, again, refresh, so Healthy Juntos has 3 kind of components. We give them a Fitbit, they get to use our application, and then they also meet with a health coach. And here you're gonna see Healthy Juntos kind of in action. You see that they can send their messages to one another, and then inside the modules, they are able to set goals for their steps. And then we have it available both English and Spanish. They set steps for their weekly goals, as well as their healthy meals that they wanna consume that week. They are able to watch these very short 2 to 3, remember, no reading, 2 to 3 minute videos that were animated and were recorded by my team. This is where they get their positive parenting skills through the radio show hosted by Doctora Sarita, because you know they didn't want to read. And then they play a game to kind of emphasize some of the skills that they learned throughout the videos. And they have family health and discussion activities that they can do. We also featured a different Latin American country every week since we had so much diversity in terms of country of origin. This was the most reading that they did. And to tell us about their family health and discussion activities, they could either type out a message to tell us, oh, we went to the grocery store, we bought, you know, white rice or brown rice instead of white rice. And then, so they could tell us how it went, and then they got their little dancing broccoli at the end, which is very cute. And then we built in a coach because the families, you know, there's some Hispanic cultural values, personalismo, which is that personal touch, the personal connection. And so even in our field trial where we didn't have coaches, we noticed that they would really like to talk to Vanina all the time. You know, so my Fitbit's not working, my this, what should I do this? So we added the coaches in as a kind of standard part of the intervention. So in our pilot RCT, we randomly assigned 25 families to either the Healthy Juntos condition or what we call the digital health referral condition. We curated a list of apps already available on the market and let them, you know, use it if they wished. And in order to be eligible, the adolescents we were targeting were 12 to 15. They had to both have a mobile device, and it was very important when we were conceptualizing this project that it was framed as obesity prevention. And so we excluded youth who were already at or above the 95th percentile for age and gender, which is considered obesity in kids, but we needed them to be at risk. And so we do brief screeners, so that we're including youth who are not meeting recommendations for fruit and veggies, you know, exceeding screen time recommendations, and also not meeting recommendations for physical activity. We had, as I mentioned, very diverse countries of origin in our pilot RCT. 88% of the parents were female. They were about 43 years old. They had a BMI of 31, average BMI. So that's an average BMI with obesity in the parents. I always joke with my colleagues in substance use prevention that my job is harder, because when you're doing a substance use prevention study with families, the parents are kind of on board. Unless you're doing a very high-risk population, usually the parents themselves are not going to be using substances. Whereas in obesity, we have to work on changing the parents' behaviors because they're usually also struggling with their own weight status and with eating and activity. 64% were married, 80% of the parents had Spanish as their preferred language, and 88% of the sample had an annual income less than $50,000 per year. The youth were about half female, 14 years old, with an average BMI of 21, about half were in the US, and here you can see some differences in acculturation, whereas 80% of the parents had Spanish as the preferred language, only about a third of the kids had Spanish as the preferred language. Hence the need for the application to be available in both English and Spanish. And if you saw some of the icons, we kind of played off an English word and a Spanish word. Semana healthy, muy tasty recetas, bien fit workouts. So always it had an English word and a Spanish word on the outside on the icon, and that was very intentional. Okay, let's get to the good stuff, the engagement. So what this shows you here on the y-axis is the number of completed modules. One module means completing everything that was inside the Semana Healthy icon. That was setting their goals, watching the videos that I showed you, listening to the parenting radio, etc. So that's one module. If they complete one, they get there. And they had 8 modules to do. So I looked at this and I said a couple things stood out. Number one is there's a lot more green going on than there is orange, meaning that the parents were more likely to complete modules than the kids. My second takeaway from here was, but if you look at the bars, when the parents are high, those kids also tend to be high as well. And there in fact was a positive correlation between module completion for the parents and the kids of 0.82. So strong correlation. If the parents are doing it, the kids are doing it. And then my third observation was that if I can get the parents past module 2, I can get them to finish the intervention. Rarely was there parents who were kind of stuck in the middle. So if they engaged, they kind of did the program. But still, we wanted to figure out how we could better engage the adolescents. A couple other tidbits are that about 56% of the families attended 5, at least greater than 5 of our 8 coaching sessions. And then each coaching session was about 20 minutes-ish. And now the effects. So what you're looking at here is, again, the same effect size. This was a small pilot study, so we're not looking at statistical significance per se. We're looking at the sign of the effects and the size of the effects. So is it negative when it should be negative? Is it positive when it should be positive? And what are the sizes of these effects? Remember, keep in mind the effect sizes that I presented to you earlier. So what does this do? This gave me hope. And that is really what you need in order to articulate the need for your fully powered trial, that this shows promise, and so therefore we need to investigate it in a larger fully powered trial. And so what we found was, for the adolescents, BMI going in the right direction with a decent effect size, same thing for fruits and vegetables, physical activity out of school. Most of us as intervention scientists, when we're at a pilot phase, we're actually looking at whether the mechanisms of action are the first things to move, because that's what we think is going to drive change. And so most of our, what we consider mechanisms of action, communication, positive parenting strategies that I think are going to drive change, those were also moving in the right direction with very nice effect sizes as well, that I know are going to regress to the mean in my larger pilot study, but it's okay. We just needed hope at that point. Same thing for the parents. BMI moving in the right direction, a small effect there. Fruits, vegetables, we saw added sugars for them going down. And then the mechanisms of action as well, the positive parenting strategies reported from their point of view. So in summary, Healthy Physicals was developed using an iterative user-centered design. I didn't share this earlier, but our retention rate at post-intervention was 88%, so that was at the 2 months after the 8 modules. So that's nice, even though we're going to be measuring them more. The engagement rates, even though I was a little sad in my heart that the adolescents didn't have as much orange in their bars as the parents, it's okay because these engagement rates, when I looked in the literature, I kind of took a sigh of relief because they were similar to or better than some other kind of web-based parenting programs. So I said, okay, well, we can still do better. And again, what are you looking for? You're looking for hope and promise of the intervention. So now we are in our large efficacy trial. We actually just enrolled our very first family a couple weeks ago, so we're very excited about that. Only 374 more to go. I know, I pray, I say like prayers every night about that number. So what are the goals of this large efficacy trial? Well, the first aim is to look at the effects of the intervention on adolescent BMI trajectory. So we're going to be tracking them for 12 months, and we're going to be collecting data from them every 3 months, so baseline, 3, 6, and 12 months. And we're looking at the effect on their BMI trajectory, and the secondary outcomes are physical activity, diet quality, and percentage body fat. The second aim is to look at changes in the parent outcomes as mediators of the effects on the youth. And then the third aim is to look at our hypothesized psychosocial mediators to see whether or not they, account for changes in the outcomes in the adolescents. We're also upgrading this trial. So as I mentioned, we have assessment at 4 time points. We're upgrading our measures. We were using self-report measures for our pilot, so now we've really leveled up. We're using actigraph devices, which is an accelerometer. It's a more objective measure of physical activity. We're also using 24-hour diet recalls as for our measure of diet quality. This is where you call them and they tell you everything they ate the day before. There were 2 of those. And our intervention is now going to have an intensive phase, which is what I reported on in the pilot, those 8 modules in the first 3 months, and then 3 additional modules in what we're calling a maintenance phase over months 4 through 6, 1 module per month. They'll get to keep their Fitbit the full 8 weeks, and they'll have the corresponding number of coaching visits as there are modules. And the most important and cool upgrade that we have, and I can actually click it here, is the new look of Healthy Juntos for our efficacy trial. And that is what you're seeing here. And I just want to draw your attention to a couple things. Again, we're paying attention to our users. They were not tracking their foods for anything. They had to do it in their Fitbit app. They weren't doing that. So now we added these we're not even asking them to track a whole meal. Just if you ate a fruit, tap the plus sign. If you ate a vegetable, tap the plus sign. Why? If they eat fruits and vegetables, their diet quality is likely to improve. So that's right outside on the home page. Remember the adolescent orange bars that I wanted to get better? We're doing some things to do that. Number 1, by showing them their progress towards completing a module on the outside of Semana Healthy, making that more prominent, and then making the other features kind of like tools. So here is our tour of Healthy Juntos, the new and improved version. So you tap, you get the plus signs to go up. When we click inside Semana Healthy, they still have access to all their modules. Look at those brand new icons. Not as pixelated as the other ones. They just look a lot fresher, more kind of attractive to the adolescents. They get to set their goals using these nice little slider scales for their fruits and vegetables. They loved the videos and the radio episodes, which thank goodness, because those are one of the most difficult to produce. I was in like one of those recording booths of the library when I was 8 months pregnant, recording the positive parenting radio episodes, and those rooms are really small, so it's very hot in there. So the parents loved it, didn't have to re-record those episodes, very happy about that. Our plates, I don't know if you saw the old game that had like a broccoli, a chicken bone, and a spaghetti, not a cohesive meal. We have an undergraduate student who actually draws these for us now. Very culturally relevant plates. If she were here, Natalie, I'd give you a shout out. Beautiful drawings. So just a lot more improvements on the aesthetics across the board. And I think we can go back to more of the changes. We also have, we used to go out to this website called Kiwi Limon for the recipes, and now another student on our team, Shannon, has actually cooked the foods, and we have like tasty, BuzzFeed tasty style recipes. So we're delivering on the not So that's Healthy Juntos, and that's where we are with the project. I recently, just to give you some things that are kind of in the pipeline, so my team and I recently submitted an administrative supplement in January, and it was a very special call that we happened to meet the eligibility criteria on, which it was any NCI R01 level grant or others that was addressing obesity prevention. They wanted us to take a whole of systems approach to address obesity in a given community. So I'm so happy we got a letter of support from the mayor's office, from Miami-Dade County Parks and Rec, leveraging all of our connections from Miami-Dade County Libraries. And so what we're proposing to do is 3 things. Number 1 is Sylvester has this very cool tool called Scan 360 that provides maps of cancer burden and risk factors for cancer across its catchment area, which is Miami-Dade, Broward, Monroe, and Palm Beach counties. Well, what they don't have in Scan 360 is pediatric level data. And so we're proposing to use data from the One Florida Clinical Consortium to add pediatric data to Scan 360. Our next aim is to do focus groups with key leaders in the community to really see what actually is happening in Miami-Dade County in the way of obesity prevention. And then our third aim is to put together a workshop. Hopefully it'll be here, maybe at the Shalala Student Center in the future, to share with everybody what we learned and to develop this whole of systems approach to pediatric obesity prevention in the county of Miami-Dade. So that's very exciting. And then, oh, I went too fast. So that's Healthy Juntos, and now Con Cariño Abuelita. One of the very cool things is when you're kind of starting off as an investigator, you don't have big grants, right? A lot of it is sweat equity, me in the sound booth, recording myself. So I got this other small foundation grant around that time, and what I did was I pooled those resources together and said, well, I can make another application, look like or function like Healthy Juntos, but be for a different population. I just need to make new content. And so that's how kind of Con Cariño Abuelita was born. So Con Cariño Abuelita is for Hispanic female survivors of cancer and their adult daughters and our daughters-in-law, and it's really to foster this legacy of health in the family by using the experience of the survivor as this critical moment for the family and really getting to be the champion for health in her family. And so you see a very similar kind of design process as with Healthy Juntos. We put together our own rough prototypes at the beginning, iterated, looks exactly like Healthy Juntos. Actually, this app still looks like the old Healthy Juntos, not the new one, because we're in the middle of our pilot RCT. So we're just a little further behind in development with this application, but it takes a lot of time to develop the content and think through what it's going to include. And I'll just share with you, we really did think through some of the content here. One of my favorite features of this application is called El Cápsula de Tiempo, which means time capsule. And so this was inspired by an event that happened in my family. When my older daughter, turned 1, we made a time capsule for her. And I told everybody in my family, dedicate a card to her, or I put newspaper clippings in, and when she's 18, she's gonna open it. Don't tell her, okay? She doesn't know this. Please keep it a secret. And so my mother-in-law and my father-in-law did something really meaningful. They sent me a flash drive. And on that flash drive was their voices recorded saying, "Dear Lucia, happy 18th birthday, we love you." Well, when my daughter was she was not even 2 yet, my father-in-law got diagnosed with advanced lung cancer and ended up passing away within 3 weeks. And so how beautiful that my daughter has his voice wishing her a happy 18th birthday, someone that she really didn't get to interact with. And so we brought that kind of spirit to Con Cariño Abuelita. So as part of the intervention, the survivors and the daughters or daughters-in-law get to record audio recordings that are dedicated to their children or grandchildren. And we ask them a question every week that they have to answer, like, why is it important for you to be healthy? Or, tell about stories about your childhood. So it's a way to transmit like family culture, tradition, wisdom, and inspiration to the next generation. And hot off the press, in February, I was awarded a Sylvester Intraprogrammatic Research Pilot Award to add the collection of biometric data. So we're collecting saliva samples from the survivors and the daughters or daughters-in-law to assess whether or not there's any DNA methylation changes, so any changes at the more of the cellular level. So I'm working with a microbiologist, only understand about 10% of what she says when she's talking to me, but that's why team science is so important. And really excited to see how much, my team learns from this collaboration, which is exactly the purpose of these interprogrammatic partnerships. And then in terms of future directions, so for Healthy Juntos, we're adapting the intervention for youth with obesity. That's going to be a grant, hopefully, that I'll be submitting to a foundation in the next couple of months. And remember, it's just for prevention now, but I want to adapt it because I think that youth who already have obesity are likely going to have some different needs and their families. And so we're going to put together that. And then in the future, I'd like to do some hybrid trials, think about what are the best ways to disseminate this in the future and understand best delivery systems for the application. I have a dissemination advisory board on my R1, so I have somebody from an insurance company, a D&I expert. I have a former Reebok master trainer from Mexico, so a fitness professional, and people who are just there to kind of share with us, where does Healthy Juntos fit in the future. And for Con Cariño Abuelita, we'll be hopefully wrapping up our pilot trial this year and then putting in a grant to evaluate its efficacy and maybe kind of adapting it for different populations or conditions in the future. I think I did pretty well on time, left some time for questions and bathroom break for all of you. But of course, I just want to point out here that this work, even though I'm the one talking, cannot work by myself, and I have so much gratitude for my study participants and my amazing team, who really is the one, the heart of the Healthy Lifestyle Lab. So thank you so much for your time, and I'm happy to take questions.
All right, I would once again like to thank Dr. St. George for kicking off the Research Symposium.